FAO Schwarz is an iconic toy store and potentially the classiest name in the industry. I mean, just look at that black and gold logo. It looks like something that belongs to a maker of fine jewelry or gourmet chocolates, especially when you compare it to more colorful, childlike logos that you typically see from a toy store. For decades, Toys R Us was like the standard toy store that most of us would look forward to visiting when we were younger, right? They had hundreds of locations across the United States and other parts of the world that were intended for children from families with a wide range of income levels. Meanwhile, KB Toys was sort of a discount, cheaper option, more accessible to lower income families, and FAO Schwarz was the more expensive option, frequented by higher income families. Some of the toys there have sold for thousands of dollars, and at one point, they were offering a $100,000 gift card. For anyone who has seen Home Alone 2: Lost in New York, just think about Duncan's Toy Chest. Even though the movie did not film at FAO Schwarz or use any of the branding, it was heavily inspired by it. By the way, all three of these stores have declined significantly after filing for bankruptcy. In fact, Toys R Us bought the rights to the other two brands in separate deals in 2009. Yeah, ironically, toy stores have become a depressing topic, but there have been some signs of hope. FAO Schwarz is named after the person who started it, Frederick August Otto Schwarz. It's a long name. He immigrated to the United States from Germany and started a company alongside his brothers in Baltimore in 1862, so long ago that it was during the Civil War, when Lincoln was president. By 1870, they relocated to New York City and grew a reputation for selling unique toys that they were able to import over from Europe. And even though Frederick August Otto Schwarz passed away in 1911, the Schwarz family continued to run the business and even relocated the main store to a higher-end shopping district of New York City on Fifth Avenue. It became a tourist destination, considering it was probably the most extravagant toy store in the country, so obviously you have to bring your kids there during your trip to New York City. It is like a fantasy for some of them. As far as I can tell, the Schwarz family handled the store with care until 1963. I guess the younger generation was not interested in the family business, so after almost exactly a century of ownership, they sold it. And believe it or not, after that sale, FAO Schwarz has since been sold 10 more times, with none of the owners holding on to it for more than 11 years at once. So right away, if you're looking for an explanation behind the roller coaster of ups and downs and why FAO Schwarz has continually struggled to become a national brand, I would say that chaos associated with constantly changing owners and leadership has a lot to do with it. But to take a closer look at the situation, I think it would be valuable to briefly highlight each of these owners and how the brand was impacted by them. So here we go. In 1963, it was acquired by Parents Magazine. The magazine itself was being overlooked by investors, so I think the intention here was to add a recognizable name to gain some attention and credibility. According to the head of that company at the time, FAO Schwarz made a little money every year I owned it. I never thought it would make a lot, but it was nationally known, and at the time, nobody understood parents. You could see he was hinting at thin profit margins there, and that would prove to be another factor holding them back. The costs are through the roof when operating this store. Just think about it. It became a tourist destination because so much care had to be put into the experience. When visiting the store, you can expect to see elaborate displays and decorations to go along with high-salary employees and one of the most expensive real estate locations in the country. Maybe the biggest impact Parents Magazine made was opening 8 branch locations that were much more modest compared to that flagship store. But then in 1970, all of Parents Magazine was acquired by W.R. Grace & Company, who only held on to it for the next 4 years. They said that they sold it because it didn't fit in with the rest of their business that was geared toward mass merchandising, which also continued to be a major issue because most of the toys sold at FAO Schwarz were either difficult to find at other toy stores or entirely exclusive through various importing or licensing deals, which does make visiting it a unique experience, but again, it makes it difficult to turn a profit or to scale the business. For a lot of kids, it would actually be a disappointment not being able to find their favorite mass market toys that they have seen on commercials. So in 1974, W.R. Grayson Company sold the chain to Franz Karl Weber. He was the owner of various retail stores from Switzerland, who might just be the most harmful owner on the list, mostly because the business was neglected. FAO Schwarz developed a reputation of having bad customer service, not paying their suppliers on time, and then the fact that he had a heart attack toward the end of his ownership further complicated things. After about a decade, which to this date is the longest any company has held on to it since the original family, FAO Schwarz was reaching a new low point, consistently losing money when he sold it to a real estate and investment firm called Christiana Companies. And then only 1 year later, there was a management buyout where the head of Christiana, named Peter Harris, teamed up with an investment banker named Peter Morse to take control of the stores and quickly started turning things around. Listen to this, they relocated their flagship store to an even bigger location directly across the street. 40,000 square feet was now filled with even more elaborate displays, a glass elevator, and a giant animated clock in the center that would play their new theme song every 15 minutes. They sort of leaned into that luxury toy store image even more than before, and it attracted a lot of attention, especially when it was featured in the 1988 movie Big, where Tom Hanks and Robert Loggia are dancing around on that giant piano on the floor, which always makes me think of the Simpsons parody where Homer is dancing on the piano in a much more destructive way. FAO Schwarz has always stayed away from traditional advertising, so instead, Peter Harris contacted a bunch of film studios offering up the store as a filming space to try to get some publicity, and that strategy ended up working better, well, than I could have possibly imagined. The store was featured in the most memorable scene in one of the highest grossing films of the year, and to this day, that is how the store is remembered. I'll bet that there are people watching this that know that scene better than the store itself. Within 5 years of taking control, sales more than doubled, from 20 million to 50 million per year, partially because they started opening flagship stores in other major cities around the country, with plans to eventually reach 200 locations. In 1990, FAO Schwarz was sold to a large retailer from the Netherlands with a difficult name for me to pronounce, commonly known as KBB, and they continued on with the momentum by reaching about 40 locations over the next few years, but many of those locations were in suburban shopping malls and so much less impressive than their flagship stores in major cities. At the time, CEO John Eiler noted, "We always tend to disappoint people who expect to find FAO Schwarz on Fifth Avenue in their local mall," which is yet another issue with expanding the chain. There's simply not a large demand for luxury toy stores throughout the country. It is a destination location that works well enough in select tourist areas like New York, San Francisco, Chicago, but it really does not make much sense to have one at your local mall, meaning they were never really able to take advantage of economies of scale in the same way as their competitors, like Toys R Us or even Walmart or Macy's, making it difficult to offer competitive prices on similar items. And trust me, by the 2000s, things were getting really competitive when Walmart started offering some higher-end toys, and Toys R Us opened a large store in Times Square, only 15 blocks from FAO Schwarz. On top of that, the CEO of FAO Schwarz, John Eiler, who had been in charge since 1992, left the company to become CEO of Toys R Us, which led to multiple lawsuits from FAO Schwarz claiming that he violated terms of his contract and was allegedly providing Toys R Us with trade secrets and confidential information. There is a lot happening here, so let me back up a second. In 1998, all of KBB was acquired by another retailer from the Netherlands called Vendex. Nothing too significant there because only 3 years later, FAO Schwarz was sold to Right Start. It was a retailer based in California, mostly focused on merchandise for babies and young children, that had recently bought over 170 zany brainy stores. Basically, it was 3 struggling children's retailers coming together, and it did not work out very well. They ended up filing for bankruptcy in 2003 at the start of the year, and then again at the end of the year. From there, as you might expect, FAO Schwarz was closing locations. The big store in New York even shut down for most of 2004 before reopening on Thanksgiving in time for the holiday shopping season. Because, well, going back to the list, it was sold through the bankruptcy to an investment firm called D.E. Shaw & Company, and their locations continued closing until only 2 remained, the one in New York and then one in Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. In 2009, a severely diminished FAO Schwarz was bought by their primary competitor, Toys R Us, who went on to diminish the brand even further. Oddly enough, D.E. Shaw had recently made a deal with Macy's to open these miniature FAO Schwarz shops within their stores, and Toys R Us put an end to that that deal, but then over a decade later, it made a very similar deal to have miniature Toys R Us shops within their stores. In 2010, they shut down that Las Vegas location, and then in 2015, as the lease expired, they shut down the iconic Fifth Avenue location. Ironically, the brand that was established in 1862 was only available over the internet, along with select Toys R Us stores. Finally, getting to the end of the list here, in 2016, Toys R Us sold the brand to 360 Group, who went on to buy the Sharper Image only a few months later, so they were concerned with reviving well-known established brands. In fact, I would say that most of the companies on this list bought FAO Schwarz for the strength of the brand. It has to be one of the most well-known, respected brands that you could buy at such a low price. They always seem to think that they can capitalize on it in a big way, but over and over again, that proves to be impractical. The profit margins are low, and there's no clear path to scale the operation in a way that makes it any better. However, the rise again is that this current owner has stuck with it for longer than most of the others. In 2018, they opened a new flagship store, this time in Rockefeller Plaza, about 5 blocks away from the old one, that seems to capture the original spirit on a smaller scale, with the tagline, "Return to Wonder." They have also opened a handful of smaller stores, including one in Chicago at Midway Airport, one in a mall in Beijing, and one in a department store in London. And there are deals in place with other retailers like Target and Kohl's to have their merchandise sold in their stores. Honestly, I don't have much faith that it will expand too far beyond this, and it is probably tricky to maintain it even at this level. So for anyone out there who wants to experience the magic of FAO Schwarz or have your kids experience it, this might be your best time to do it. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts about FAO Schwarz? Is the brand strong enough to continue building upon this comeback, or would it be smarter to be cautious and accept it as a cool store that does not have to be a national chain? If you can't already tell, I'm leaning toward that second option, and for anyone who has actually been there, I would be curious to hear about your experience and what you may have bought. And any other thoughts you have about FAO Schwarz or any of these other toy stores, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.